But what would you say? How do you figure out? How do you know I was the one?
The easy way that I was able to retract any bias that I had, because it's really easy to look at someone that's super cute and just shove all of their shortcomings under a rug. But if you think of that person as your own son or your daughter, as a carbon copy of that person, all of a sudden those faults that you were shoving under the rug become blatantly obvious in your face, and you don't want to deal with it. If the person has especially just kind of blemishes in their habits or their personality, because your child you want to be proud of, and it just is viewed differently if you think of it as your son or daughter as them.
So it's just perspective change more than anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of viewing it as your husband or your wife, you're viewing it as your son or your daughter. That's interesting. Yeah, I think that's probably really, really good advice for a lot of people. I also think that it's good to have spiritual direction whenever you're discerning seriously, because whenever you're in that state and you're falling in love with somebody, all these emotions are going on.
Yes. It takes the romantics out of it. That's why if you think of it as your child, you're not romantically invested in your child. You want to be proud of your child, and you want your child to live virtuously in this world, and you're able to see those faults a lot more glaringly when you take the infatuation and the romance out of it.
Right. Yeah, I also think that people, whenever they're dating, it's important that there's some suffering involved in the dating process or in the engagement process. I think that for a couple of reasons. One is it gives you some insight into how your future spouse is going to handle stress. Because if you're dating somebody and their first reaction in a stressful situation is anger or childishness or immaturity, that's going to be a long, tough marriage. That's going to be brutal, because having kids, we have 2 kids now, and every day is just, there are so many occasions for patience. And if somebody doesn't have the ability to problem solve or to deal with stress well, then your entire marriage, I feel like, is just going to turn into a shouting match, right? Yeah, so I think that that would be good. I also think that every single relationship has to be sanctified by suffering. And it can either come from inside the marriage, inside the relationship, or outside of the relationship. And so I think you really should be grateful that the sufferings that you have come from outside of your marriage, because you don't want those internal sufferings. You want sufferings, pain, obstacles to be an occasion for you guys to grow together and have an us versus the problem mentality, as opposed to me versus you, which is just exactly what the devil wants to instigate and cause.
Yeah. Absolutely. And on the note of finding someone who has emotional control over themselves is so important for a woman to really vet that in the man that they're dating. Because what I've noticed when Celine and Jude are just screaming their heads off,
yeah,
which I see the clouds in your eyes. We both know very much it happens a couple times a day. And it's not because...
Maybe 20.
Yeah, it's because of the ages that they're at right now.
It's tough ages. It's definitely tough ages.
It's a 6-month-year-old and a 2-year-old. So they both have vastly different needs. And there's only 2 of us and 1 mom throughout the day. So there's moments of high intensity, and your calmness really keeps everything stable. And it keeps me stable as well and at peace. But I've noticed that the man's energy and the man's emotional control really anchors the house.
Yeah.
And how long the kids are going to scream for, honestly. Because you and your reaction, if you showed how upset you were or got into it with the kids, it would really be gasoline on the entire situation.
Yeah.
And that only gets worse as the kids get older. And it brings these situations from like a 1 to a 10 in seconds. And then even just the whole house atmosphere. I could be a fantastic wife and have dinners cooked every day and the house absolutely clean and the kids well dressed and cleaned and showered and bathed. And if you came home upset or depressed or anxious or angry, it would offset the entire house. It wouldn't matter what I did all day. Everyone would, like, the mood would change in the house, and the kids would feel it, and it would reflect in their behaviors. And so I think it's really important for women to really look at the guys they're dating and think about how they handle stress, like you said, and what their threshold is. And when they are stressed, what is their go-to response? Because the screaming children is something that's kind of unavoidable in some ways. It's not a bad thing. It's just par for the course.
Just the way it is. Yeah.
And you have to kind of just lean into it and be like, okay, they're going to scream for a couple minutes, and we're just going to continue buckling them into the seat of their car. And as we start the car, they're going to stop. But if you marry a man that has a hard time not taking it personal, I guess, then it's going to inflame those situations and break down the relationships between the parents and the child, and even the husband and wife going at each other, where I think you do a great job being a very calm, peaceful thing. The kids can chase their own tails, spin themselves out, and we just wait for it to stop.
I told Jess the other day, that was well said, by the way. This should be your podcast, and I should be the guest. That was brilliant. I think that was very insightful. But I told Jess the other day, I think I was holding Jude, and he was screaming in my right ear. And I said something like, that's just the sound of us being sanctified. It sounds like angels singing, you know?